Hello, my name is Jolie and I'm absolutely delighted today to welcome you to a very special Voyage showcase for our new and exclusive itinerary for 2022, the Hungarian Fall Colours. Today I'll be joined by Andrea and George, our two travel experts with the Golden Eagle Danube Express. I'll now pass you over to Andrea, who'll be giving you an overview of Hungary, which has fast become one of Europe's most sought after locations. Then George, our expert travel guide, will provide more information on the rich history and culture which shape Hungary's antiquated charm and allure. Now, if you do have any questions about this tailor-made voyage or any of our other departures, please do not hesitate to get in touch. The contact details can be found at the end of this video and also in the description link below. Thank you.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all to this presentation, which is about a special tour of ours, the only one in Europe, where you may discover a country with its hidden gems alongside the main attractions and get a comprehensive overview at the end. You may experience on this journey the true face of Hungary, with its beauty and hard-to-reach treasures. We would like to give you a glimpse into our trip, show you what special things await those traveling with us, and why Hungary is worth exploring in its depths. My name is Andrea Pető. I'm tour manager on the Golden Eagle Danube Express train, which takes you to this wonderful experience. Hungary is a country in the center of Europe, and it really is, as the geometric center of the continent is in one of our villages. Also, apart from this fact, I would say the country is the heart of Europe, where East and West meet. When at the international pier on the river Danube, shipmen reach Hungary coming from the Black Sea, they often arrive with the impression of starting to be on the western part of Europe. On the other hand, when same ones come from the Western countries, they have a big sigh and say, "I'm back east." Both is true, as in Hungary, for example, you can be part of the most important and elegant cultural event, but also enjoy Eastern-style ruin pubs, which takes you back to the communist times. You can still discover the influence of the Turkish occupation, but also the influence of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Our history is extremely rich, such as, for example, our ABC, which contains 44 letters. Fall Colours journey, one has the chance to discover very different cities, from the capital to county towns, a famous Hungarian palace, having a rowing experience in a cave, World Heritage traditional village life we will see, nature from autumn-colored forest to the Hungarian plain with its fauna, an incredible cave system with giant holes, taste of the most famous Hungarian wine and the vineyards where it derives from, enjoy a narrow gauge train ride in a national park, walking by an enormous panorama painting, and many more minor surprises. Our aim on this trip is to show how diverse Hungary is. The journey starts and ends in the capital, Budapest, a wonderful city full of sights and surprises, where you can immerse yourself in history, architecture, wonders, culture, spas, and gastronomy. If you have ever seen a photo of the city, I'm sure you have already met the so-called Fisherman's Bastion, where from a fantastic panoramic view is revealed, and a special gastronomic experience will wait for you during our journey. On our very first day on the train, we travel along Central Europe's largest lake, Lake Balaton, which, especially in autumn, shows a magical harmony of deep blue, yellow and red colors with its surroundings. Also, you may have a boating experience under a charming small town in a cave system, where you can row 180 meters on crystal clear water among nature-created magnificent shapes out of limestone. After our first night spent on the train, we arrive at the western part of Hungary, where we walk through the city of loyalty and freedom, and one of the oldest cities in the country called Sopron. George, our guide, will tell you in detail why it is one of Hungary's hidden beauty and also unique experience to discover its old town center. Late afternoon, we visit a living traditional Hungarian village, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site for a long time, and where we meet locals and may see closely how they spend their days and keep their stuff. The following day is a day of variety, with discovering one of the most important historical towns of Hungary, full of memories from the Ottoman times, also with a mythical narrow-gauge train experience in the national park among autumn-colored hillsides and valleys. And before the sun goes down, we reach the biggest stalactite cave system of Europe, where only our group will be guided around at the most impressive part of it. We start the coming morning with seeing the unique Hungarian plain, where the horizon is far, far away, and the native animals such as the Hungarian grey cattle or buffalo can be almost touched from our horse-drawn carriages. We also taste a bit of the lifestyle herdsmen and horsemen used to live. The afternoon takes us into a world of flavors and colors, tasting one of the most famous Hungarian wine in the Tokaj region. George is going to describe you the specialty of the place and the wine. On the last day, the train takes us to the southern part of Hungary, where we learn a bit of the country's ancient history via an enormous panorama painting that depicts the settlement of the Hungarians. Walking by the painting is like being part of the scenes of the conquest. It may sound a bit frightening, but I promise you it's quite a nice experience. Finally, we end the exploration with a Mediterranean town's visit, which is often described as the city of sunshine, not just because of the weather, but the atmosphere you can feel on every corner of this county seat. In the evening, we return to Budapest and say goodbye to our train. I really hope those ones who will join us for this wonderful journey will enjoy every moment of this trip, and our entire staff and team is looking forward to welcoming you on board. Thank you.
Sopron is a wonderful Hungarian city in the western part of Hungary, not too far from Austria. The western part of Hungary in our history was under the control of the Roman Empire, so that's why Sopron has a very strong Roman background as well. But Hungarian people settled down on the present territory of Hungary in the second half of the 800s, and Sopron became a very significant Hungarian border town. In our history, Hungary was under the control of many other empires, many times. For example, in the 15 and 1600s, Hungary was controlled by the Turks. And during the Turkish occupation, Sopron suffered big damage, but fortunately managed to give shelter to many people who had to escape because of the Turkish invasion. 350 years ago, a very big disaster happened in Sopron, a fire accident, and many buildings of the town were totally destroyed by the fire. So that's why the actual old buildings of Sopron are originated from the 17 and 1800s as well. In the 20th century, Sopron became the most loyal town of Hungary, because during the World War I, Hungary was on the losing side, and after that war, Hungary was punished by those countries which managed to win the First World War. And Hungary lost 2/3 of its territory and 1/3 of its population. And people of Sopron had the chance to vote. They could vote if they want to belong to Hungary or not. And most people of the town decided to stay in Hungary. So that's why Sopron managed to get the most loyal town of Hungary title. As you see, according to this photo as well, Sopron is really wonderful. Old buildings can be found in the foreground and charming hills are in the background. There are two big towers in the photo. The tower in the foreground is the tower of the Benedictines church. The Benedictines church was originally built in the 1200s, and originally it was built for the Franciscans and given to the Benedictines later. This building is called Goat Church as well, because according to the legend, the construction works of the building were financed by treasure which was found by goats. The other spire of this photo in the background belongs to the Lutheran Church of Sopron, which was built in the 1700s. But this city is not only famous for spires of churches. There is a very important tower in this town, the Fire Watch Tower, which was built in the 1200s. The guards of the tower warned people for fire with lanterns by night and colorful flags by day. The foot of the tower is very famous for the Gate of Loyalty, which commemorates about that time and that event when the people of Sopron decided to stay in Hungary after the World War I. The view is really stunning from the tower. You can experience it with the help of this photo as well. Not too far from the tower, the main square of Sopron can be found, where you will find this wonderful Holy Trinity statue, which commemorates about the survival of the Black Plague epidemic. This is the first twisted column which was put outside in Europe, so that's why this column, this statue is quite unique and quite important for Hungary as well. It's a wonderful baroque statue. But Sopron is not only famous for religious buildings or monuments, it is very famous for the culture as well, and very famous for this yellow building, which is the theater of the town. Performances in Sopron took place in the 1700s, but the theater building was built only in the 1800s. And as you see, the main facade of the building is decorated by human figures. That decoration was made according to the sgraffito technique, which is the following. Different colored layers are plastered on the wall, and the pattern is scratched into the soft plaster to reveal a different color beneath. So this building is one of the highlights of this great city. As I have mentioned before, Sopron was under the control of the Roman Empire as well, and Roman ruins still can be found in the town. With the help of this photo, you can see the ruins of the Roman walls. The Roman walls nowadays exist in the city, but unfortunately in the 1800s the biggest part of the walls were dismantled by the local people. But it is really interesting to see Roman ruins in Sopron as well. Sopron is a fascinating town, not only because of the churches or the Fire Watch Tower or the Roman ruins as well. It is quite famous for wonderful restaurants, wonderful pastry shops and coffee houses as well. And if you visit this town, don't forget to taste the wine of Sopron, which is really famous in Hungary, since that part of our country is a famous wine region as well. All in all, I hope that you will have the chance to visit this wonderful town in the future, and you will experience the beauty of Sopron with your own eyes. Tokaj is a small Hungarian town in the northern part of Hungary, not too far from Eger. Approximately 4,000 people live in this town. Tokaj is very famous for the wine. We can say that it is the center of the Hungarian wines. Vineyard was in Tokaj in the 1000s as well, and later the town became very developed market town because of its leading position in the wine trade and the Hungarian wine culture as well. But during the Second World War, Tokaj lost its leading position, and after the World War II, in Hungary, in case of the wine culture, the quality was not too important, but the quantity was much more important. In the 1980s, Tokaj managed to get back its original leading position in the wine culture and its urban title as well. In the 21st century, the UNESCO decided to value the Tokaj wine region, so that's why Tokaj wine region is a UNESCO's World Heritage Site nowadays. The hills with the right altitude, the fertile soil, and the sunshine together result the best wines of Hungary, which are highly valued in other countries as well at international level. Tokaj is very famous for the wine cellars as well, and the best place to taste wines is a wine cellar. The hospitality is wonderful in the wine cellars. People are very friendly, so when you visit this wonderful town, I recommend you to visit one of the cellars as well. Of course, in the wine cellars, you can learn a lot about the Hungarian wines as well. The most famous Hungarian Tokaj wine is the Asszú wine, which is a very sweet dessert white wine. The sugar content of this wine is really high. This wine, the grapes of the Asszú wine are late harvested in November when the grapes start to rot. And this novel rot gives the special sweetness of the wine. Long time ago, by the way, people thought that the Asszú wine contains gold as well because it is very sweet, but of course it doesn't contain gold. We can say that the Tokaj Asszú wine is the king of the wines and the wine of the kings as well. And if you drink wine in a cellar in Tokaj, after some glasses of wine, you will speak Hungarian language very well. Hungarian language is a very hard language, but the wine will help you. And after some glasses, you can try to say cheers in Hungarian. In Hungarian, people say egészségedre when they say cheers. Egészségedre, the short version is EGS, because if you drink too much, you won't be able to say this long expression. So we can say that wine and the Tokaj wine will help you a lot in case of your Hungarian skills. But Tokaj is famous for buildings as well. For example, famous for the Heart of Jesus Christ church as well, which can be seen in this photo. Tokaj is a wonderful place where you can enjoy wonderful programs, wonderful concerts, great wine as well, and exhibitions as well in one of the museums of the town, the Tokaj Museum or the Wine Museum as well. So all in all, I would like to tell you that if you visit Tokaj, you want to spend there more than one day, because one day is not enough there, not at all, believe me. Eger is a Hungarian city in the northern part of Hungary, not too far from Slovakia. This town is the second most populated town of Hungary in the northern region. Approximately 52,000 people live in Eger. Eger is an educational and cultural center nowadays. It has been inhabited since the Stone Age. It was established by the first Hungarian king, King Stephen, in the 10th century. The castle of Eger was built up at that time on a hill, and within the castle area the first cathedral of the town was also built up. In the Hungarian history, Eger suffered big damage during the Mongol invasion of the country in the 1200s. Eger was attacked by another empire as well later in the 1500s, the Ottoman Empire. In the middle part of the 1500s, the people of Eger managed to defeat the Turks. It was a great victory, not only for Hungary, for Europe as well. A Hungarian artist, a Hungarian writer, wrote a book about this great victory. The title of the novel is The Eclipse of the Crescent Moon. But the Turks came back to Eger at the end of the 1500s, and they stayed in Eger for 91 years. At that time, in the 1600s, Turkish highlights were built up in Eger, for example, mosque, minaret, and Turkish baths as well. Turks left Hungary at the end of the 1600s, and in the 17 and 1800s, Eger became a very developed city, and we can say that the present famous highlights of the town were built up at that time. In the 1800s, a big disaster happened in Eger, a fire accident, and almost half of the city suffered big damage at that time. In the 20th century, during the Second World War, Eger didn't suffer big damage, but after the World War II, in the communist times, Eger became an industrial city. Fortunately, the central part of the town was preserved, and the original baroque buildings from the 17 and 1800s can be found in the city center of Eger. Nowadays, Eger, as I have mentioned before, is a cultural and educational center. Full of classical buildings in the city center, and newer buildings from the 20th century can be found in the background. This photo is dominated by a tower which can be found almost in the middle of the picture. That tower is the minaret, which was built by the Turks in the 1600s. It's a sandstone tower, and originally, close by the tower, next to it, there was a mosque as well, but nowadays the mosque building is not there. Turkish people loved Eger, and besides the minaret, they built up Turkish baths as well in the town. Nowadays, the Turkish thermal baths of Eger still exist. But Eger is one of the most important cities of the Hungarian Christianity. The second largest Christian church of Hungary can be found in Eger, which is the cathedral. This yellow cathedral building was built in the 1800s. The building is quite interesting because two towers can be found on the building and the dome as well, and the two towers are taller than the dome. So that's why this is a really interesting cathedral. It has Italian features as well. Some statues of the building were made by an Italian artist. The interior part of the cathedral is also wonderful. Wonderful frescoes are on the ceiling which symbolize the kingdom of heaven. And this building is very famous for the largest organ of Hungary as well, which is still in use. All in all, I can tell you that Eger is a wonderful city, is a city that you should visit as soon as possible. Not only because of the cathedral or the Turkish minaret. Eger is very famous for great museums and exhibitions as well. For example, the Beatles exhibition, the Beatles Museum can be found in the town. And in Eger, wonderful pastry shops, confectionaries can be found, and great restaurants as well, where you can taste the the very famous local wine, the Eger bull's blood wine. It's a strong red dry wine, and we call it bull's blood because in the Middle Ages, when the people of Eger fought against the Turks, they were drinking always red wine before the fights. And the Turkish people thought that Hungarians were drinking wine which contained blood as well, because after this red wine, the Hungarian soldiers became very strong, very brave and enthusiastic. But the Eger bull's blood wine doesn't contain blood, not at all. This wine is one of the symbols of the town and one of the symbols of Hungary, and I hope that in the future you will have the chance to taste this really good wine in this wonderful city. Festi panorama painting can be found in Ópusztaszer, which is in the southern part of Hungary. It's a small village not too far from the city of Szeged. According to the Hungarian legend, on this site, the Magyar chiefs, the Hungarian chiefs of the ancient Hungarians, chose Árpád as their leader with their blood pact in the second half of the 800s. The first National Assembly of Hungary also took place here. The laws and the rules of the country were defined. Ópusztaszer is really famous for a big park as well, which is the National Heritage Park. National Heritage Park is an outdoor museum, a skansen. Skansen exhibits collections of buildings and artifacts outdoors, and it shows how people lived in the old times in a certain region of the country. 19th century buildings, windmills, houses, workshops which demonstrate folk crafts can be found in this big park. In the park there are buildings which look like tents as well, and these tents are very similar to the yards. Yards were used by the nomads, by the Hungarians, ancient Hungarians, Mongols and the Turks as well. In some of these buildings exhibitions also can be found. But the most important building of the park is the rotunda. The rotunda gives place for the huge Festi panorama painting. This painting is a detailed depiction of the Hungarian arrival into the Carpathian Basin and the Great Hungarian Plain in the second half of the 800s. In this picture, only the certain part of the painting can be seen. It's a 15-meter tall, 50 feet tall, and 120-meter long, almost 400 feet long circular panorama painting, which was painted by 24 Hungarian artists. The main painter was Árpád Festi. It was painted in the second half of the 1800s for the year of the millennium 1896. At that time, people in Hungary celebrated the 1000th anniversary of the Hungarian arrival from Asia to Central Europe. This painting suffered big damage during the World War II, and it was returned to the public view in 1996. Árpád Festi, this great Hungarian painter, saw a panoramic painting in Paris which inspired him to make a painting about the biblical flood, but his father-in-law, who was a very famous Hungarian writer, Mór Jókai, managed to convince him to paint a huge painting about the Hungarian arrival. Árpád Festi visited the Verecke Pass as well. The Verecke Pass is in the Carpathian Mountains, and that place is very famous because Hungarians entered the Carpathian Basin there in the second half of the 800s. The public interest in connection with the painting was really high. The Council of Budapest contributed to the costs, and the painting became very popular, not only in Hungary, in other European countries as well. At the end of the 1800s, it was transported to London for the Greater Britain exhibition as well. The Hungarian history can be discovered with the help of this painting. As I have mentioned before, Hungarians came from the east, from the present territory of the northern Kazakhstan. And there was a migration at that time from the east to the west. The migration took place because of different reasons, because of the lack of pasture, because of the climate change, and because of the growing population as well. 7 Hungarian tribes and 7 Hungarian tribe leaders arrived to the Carpathian Basin at the end of the 800s, with the leadership of Arpad, and as I have mentioned before, he was chosen by the ancient Hungarians with their blood pact. Hungarians were pagans, Hungarians were nomads, and the Hungarians became Christian people exactly in 1000, and Hungary is still a Christian country. The Hungarian history is quite interesting. This country many times was under the control of other empires, but fortunately Hungary always managed to survive these occupations. So this wonderful park, all in all, is really interesting, open for everyone, very rich in cultural and folklore events and programs as well. For example, Watermelon Day can be found in the park in summer and Paprika Day in fall. It's a great place for all the people, for the Hungarians, for the foreign people as well, and I really hope that you will have the chance to visit this park as soon as possible in the future.